Hello, and welcome back to the Raw Code Academy. As always, I'm your host, David Flanagan, also known across the internet as Raw Code. I'm excited to be sharing with you today a new project that no one has ever heard of, because it's not public yet. So, if you want to see a pretty sweet project that can help you be more productive and a happier developer, you're at the right place. Building applications in the dawn of cloud native has meant that we don't just focus on our business logic, because our time is spread thin across ops, DevOps, containers, message brokers, contracts, gRPC, GraphQL, and a myriad of 1,000 other concerns. But what if there was another way? What if you could just focus on your business logic and not have to worry about the platform and just get shit done? Well, let me introduce you to Gatepad. Gatepad is a framework that can get in your face or get out your way. You get to decide. And what do I mean by get in your face or get out your way? Well, by get in your face, I mean that Gatepad can be opinionated. It can provide tracks that you just put your code on and it runs. You write a simple Python function and ship it to prod with a git push. But if you want it to get out your way, you can use it as a framework for deploying your code and your applications to Kubernetes or even with Ansible. The choice is yours. Today, I'm going to show you a small application that I built on top of Guidepad, the Guidepad way, using their type system, their services, their data stores. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we have my terminal with 2 panes. The 2 panes aren't that important right now, but they will be soon. I built an application to resemble Pocket. If you're not familiar with Pocket, it's an application where you can save web pages and URLs that you will never ever read again. I wanted to build the exact same thing on top of Guidepad using Guidepad as the framework. So the first thing we're going to do is create a bookmark. For this, I'm going to use the Guidepad CLI. Remember, we're doing this the Guidepad way with only the Guidepad tooling, where I can say entity, create, bookmark. This command will allow me to take standard in as a description of our bookmark. We denote this with a dash and a here dot. If you're familiar with Linux, you've seen this syntax before. I can now add our bookmark, where I'm just going to add the Raw Code Academy website. We can then end our here dot like so. Now, Guidepad here, it does the plugin stuff behind the scenes, and we'll talk about that as we progress through this video. But all you need to know is right now, it's about to create a bookmark. We can then use the Guidepad CLI to list all of the bookmarks within the system. So now I can do Guidepad, entity, list, bookmark. And I'm going to pass in an empty selector, because we have the ability to filter the bookmarks if we wish. However, right now, we should only have one. And my font's a bit big, but you can see we have a whole bunch of information here, more than the information that we provided on the command line. Our Guidepad system has taken the URL that we provided. It has scraped the endpoint for metadata and found us a title, a description, the language of the web page. It's tried to find an author and an image, but that's not important. And then there's a summary on the end. So what happened here? Well, we've deployed a plugin to Guidepad for the bookmark service that tells it whenever you save a new bookmark, go and fetch all this information and update the entity, even using OpenAI to generate a summary of the web page. So let's try that one more time with another URL. We'll do Guidepad, entity, create, bookmark, here URL, and a story from the BBC. End our here doc and let our entity be created by the Guidepad system. And done. Now we can run Guidepad, entity, list, bookmark, and we can even filter this now if we wish. So let's say that we only want to see the URL that we just added. Let's scroll up. This article is Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg agree to hold a cage fight. We have the description, we have the language, and because this was an article from the BBC, we do have an author, however, there's still no image. And we have our summary from ChatGPT. Perfect. Well, let's take a look at how we built this system on top of Guidepad. Let's head over to my IDE, where we have a directory called Guidepad Raw Code. This is my Guidepad plugin. A Guidepad plugin is a bunch of Python code, which you store in Git and register with the Guidepad system. You may have noticed that every time I ran the Guidepad CLI, it was fetching the plugins and the types, doing constant reconciliation or looking for changes within the Git repository. You get to define your own requirements.txt for each of your plugins. So here, it was very easy for me just to add in the OpenAI package, as well as bprint to make my debugging life a little bit easier. Then we have another directory, again called Gatepad raw code, where we can define and work with the type system provided to us by Gatepad. In order to provide my plugin, I had to tell it the operations, the services, and the types that my plugin is going to register. And what you'll see here is I actually have two systems being deployed by a single plugin. I haven't just written a Pocket bookmark API, I've also written a URL shortener, which maybe we'll take a look at in another video. But right now, let's take a look at our bookmark type. This is a very simple Python class that extends the Guidepad base type system. It's not important that you understand how this works right now, so let's just go over the high levels. We define the properties for our bookmarks. 1, we need a URL. Then all of the additional fields that we're going to try to extract from the URL itself, such as the title, description, the language, and so forth. All of the columns that you've seen on the CLI. We then have a bunch of functions that I provided to make my life a little bit easier. 1, a function which will get the body for the URL. This is just using the Python request module, where we do a get on the URL that was provided. If it doesn't return a 200, we don't allow you to save your URL. Let's check that out. Let's do Guidepad, entity, create bookmark, where we have a URL, google.com/fake page, and end. And there we have our exception. Now, is this the best way to block the saving of the bookmark? No, not really. However, it does work. And in the future, we'll take a look at how to handle errors properly within the Gatepad system. We then have our summarize function, which will grab the first 12,000 characters of the web page and send them to ChatGPT for a completion and a summary. In order to enrich our bookmarks with metadata, we're using the microlink API. We send it the URL and request the metadata. From here, we can just set the properties on our class, title, description, language, and so forth. And the way that we make this work is to override the save function on the base type. So here, we just say if there is no title, meaning we haven't fetched any metadata before, or perhaps it failed, then we grab the body, enrich with metadata, and summarize. Nice and simple. So there's a lot to like about this file. 1, I haven't really had to use any of the Guidepad APIs. I just wrote Python code. The one time I did use the Guidepad API was to handle something that I really don't want to have to worry about, that I really don't want to have to handle myself, which is secrets. If we scroll up, you'll see here on line 31 that we used secret.listSingle to request an OpenAI token. This reveals something about Guidepad that may not have been obvious at first. Everything in Guidepad is built on the type system, including secrets. Bookmarks are types. Short URLs are types. Services are types. Ingress are types. Everything is built on this system. So when you buy into that opinionated system, building applications can almost become trivial. You get to focus on your business logic and none of the surrounding platform, infrastructure, or operating needs. Okay, but let's assume we don't want to have to rely on the Guidepad entity list bookmarks to see the bookmarks within our system. It's likely that you want to be able to consume them from external services, third-party systems, or even applications on your mobile phone or your desktop. Well, we can do that too. If I run curl and grab this last command, you can see that we can curl raw code, launchpad dev, or DW tech, blah, 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 bookmark API 2. This is a domain provided by the Guidepad service that exposes my bookmark API. And this is the second time I've done it. Go figure. But if we run this, we can now see the 2 bookmarks that I created at the start of this video. We can see the Raw Code Academy and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk agreeing to fight. So in order to make this work, we had to define a service. So let's pop open our plugin and open our plugin.py. Here you can see that we expose the Bookmark API as a service on this plugin. This Bookmark API extends the Operations API within Gatepad. The Operations API allows you to define the operations available to query data within the Gatepad system. Here we're extending that to remove a whole bunch of boilerplate that would otherwise be required to expose a Flask application on the Gatepad framework. Again, buying in to the Guidepad tracks so that we don't have to do everything ourselves. Now, the only thing that's important in this file is that we give a service type a name, something that uniquely identifies it within the Gatepad system. We then tell it that the endpoints for this API are provided by my plugin operations bookmark. So let's head over there. We open the operations directory and we go to the bookmarks file. Here, we're using the Blueprint Flask functionality to provide new endpoints on our API. Here we can say that on / we are going to list bookmarks. And we're using the Guidepad base type APIs to fetch those resources. Here we call bookmark.list with no filters. We use a comprehension to loop over them and we serialize them, giving us back the bookmarks object, which we can then turn into JSON and return. It's just that simple. So as a bit of an experiment, why don't we add a new piece of functionality to this application? Let's copy our list function, like so. And this time, we're going to add a to-do endpoint, which is going to return all of the bookmarks that we haven't read yet. We'll call this to-do bookmarks. So we don't want to return all bookmarks here. We only want to return the ones where read equals false. So we can add a search, like so. However, we want we want read as false. Now, this property doesn't exist on our type yet, so let's make that change. Okay, so let's add a read property to our bookmark type. Here, we can set the default equals false, meaning that by default, if there's no property, we assume it is unread, or no value at least. So let's deploy this change to the Gatepad system. To do that, we go back to our terminal, where we can do git add Gatepad raw code, and git commit add to do endpoint, and push. Okay, now that we've pushed that up, we can run Gatepad entity list bookmark all bookmarks. However, this time we're only going to request a few of the attributes. First, the URL, whether it's been read, and then the summary, like so. Now, because we pushed our plugin to a remote repository, and now we're running the Gatepad CLI, it's going to notice that we need to update the plugin, do a git pull, check the requirements, and then we'll have our plugin up to date. So we also added, with the latest change, our new endpoint, pull down any bookmarks that we haven't read yet. We can run a curl, pasting in the URL for our service, and add our new to-do endpoint and pipe it through JQ. This returns both of our bookmarks because both are currently set to false and unread. So let's go up to this top pane. Now I could do a Gatepad entity, edit, bookmark, and drop in this ID, but I'm just going to create a new one from a file so you can see that flow, and then that'll show us that we have a working filtered API endpoint on the bottom tab too. So we could do entity create bookmark, and instead of using the here doc, we're going to pull this in from our plugin, bookmark.json, like so. We can pop over into my editor, and you'll see that this bookmark.json just has a URL and the read status set to true. So let's run our summary one more time. Nice. And if we query our to-do endpoint, we still have 2 bookmarks, even though above we have google.com read true. So that's Gatepad. Gatepad is an extremely flexible, powerful, opinionated tool, all at the same time. You get to opt in to the behaviors that you want. If you just want to write some code, have it deployed and exposed to your customers, not have to worry about databases, you could do that. Join us for the next video, where we take a slightly different approach to Gatepad. We'll see you then. Have a great day.